And so,
And we're
uh,
live. We're live.
oh, okay. Yes. Hello, everybody.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Conversations in Pop Culture. I have with me Otaku Nate. I've been on his show, and me and Nate have known each other for almost 9 years now, give or take.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
And so I want to give everybody sort of the background on how we met and what happened and how this kind of all came together and our friendship sort of started. So I used to live in New York and I used to go to a lot of anime cons such as Liberty City Anime Con, Katori Con, Anime Next, and Nate lives in Jersey. And what wound up happening is that I would be presenting at Anime Next, Nate would be presenting, and I was like, oh, I would like to go. Otaku Nate is doing something similar to what I was doing, which was some YouTube stuff and writing about anime. And we had similar concepts and panels. And then we never met until Liberty City Anime Con when I was doing my Tezuka panel. And you were actually speaking to my mom. And then somebody in the back, one of the people, I guess, staffing it, were like, shh. And then obviously I went to your panel and then we caught up the next day and we've just known each other on Facebook ever since. So that's the story of how me and Nate know each other. For those who are interested, and it's a very interesting con friendship. So I just wanted
It
to
it
tell that story.
is very interesting. I was at your Japanese games panel, and you were talking about Hanafuda, and I pretty much pantsed you when I said, "Oh, like in Summer Wars," and you admitted to never seeing Summer Wars, which baffled me.
Oh man, no, 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 no. Yeah, I might have not seen Summer Wars at that point because I don't know if I had my Miyazaki panel done at that point, and my modern directors panel talking about Hasoda and all that stuff at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happened, and I think that's a great place to start in talking about stuff with this anime con shit that's going on. Obviously, we're in the middle of COVID-19, and so how did you get into anime cons? Is kind of where I want to start a little bit because I do want to talk a lot about this because I don't get to talk about this with other people.
Well, I feel a better question is how I got into anime, because I think we should start even further back.
Floor's yours.
What?
Floor's yours.
Like, where did I get to start with anime?
Yeah. So how did you get into the anime side of things?
Well, the way it started was that usually when during my days at elementary school, my mother would teach dance classes, and because she wasn't home, my dad worked in the city. She would leave me off at a friend's house, and oftentimes I would just, mess around on their computer playing Busy Town or Super Mario Brothers on their NES, or watch whatever Thomas the Tank Engine video I happened to have on me at the time. And one day, I happened across this one show airing on Cartoon Network, and it looked completely different from anything I had seen at the time. It wasn't Dexter's Laboratory, it wasn't Ren and Stimpy, it certainly wasn't Hey Arnold. And I'm like, what is this show? This animation looks different. It's strange. And I'm like, okay, I'll sit on the couch at 4 p.m. tomorrow and then watch it. The show in question was Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon was my first ever anime, and I think technically I was my first was Pokemon, or going even further back, I think I got like the edited for TV version of Heidi Girl of the Alps on VHS from a local video store, but Sailor Moon was the first show that I ever watched where I recognized that, hey, it was anime. And I think of all the so-called gateway level anime, I feel Sailor Moon still holds up after all these years.
And so that was the gateway. And then at what point did that gateway start expanding? And what did that look like? Because just to give everybody context, I'm 27. I don't know how old you are exactly, Nate, but you're right.
29.
Nate's around my age, so you're part of my generation. And that generation had DBZ, Zoids was on, Gundam, Mobile Suit Gundam Wing was on, Outlaw Star was coming out at around that time. So, and Toonami was, for the most part, for a while, was on during the weekend. I think it was even on during Saturdays. And so, what was that like for you and how that expanded? Because obviously, Sailor Moon and DBZ are gateways into the anime world.
Well, here's the thing. I never really watched anything outside of Sailor Moon, to be honest, because, and I'm kind of ashamed to admit this, I was a sheltered child. I abhorred anything with violence in it. Like, my parents, they wouldn't even let me watch The Simpsons. Like, I was 8 or 9 years old, and whenever The Simpsons were on, I was like, oh, sorry, Nate, you can't watch that. Like, all my friends were watching things like WWE Raw and South Park and all that, but here I am, still watching my Thomas tapes, still watching Will Quack Quack, if any of you guys remember that little 600 IQ show.
So at what point did you then go from Sailor Moon into what I guess is modern day or closer to modern day anime?
When
Because
I
at some
got
point you had to
TiVo.
transition over.
When I got TiVo, because as I grew older, my sensitivities started to erode a little bit. Like, I was watching Yu-Gi-Oh! On Cartoon Network, and that was really the only other anime I was watching. I was getting things like Beckett Anime Collector. Remember that with those ridiculous magazine covers? And they were like showing me things like Inuyasha, and I believe on fanfiction.net, author I followed was big into Inuyasha, and I'm like, what's this Inuyasha thing? Well, it was on at an impossible hour, and I was always a bed before 10:30 kind of kid. But once I got TiVo, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna start watching Inuyasha with this new technology. And so I started following Inuyasha, and I was blown away by it. I'm like, dude, this cartoon has blood and it's got nudity in it. I mean, it's not gratuitous or anything, but I'm like, dude, I'm becoming an adult with this. And shortly thereafterward, I started watching some of the other stuff that was on Adult Swim. I was watching Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex. I watched Evangelion back when that was broadcast on Adult Swim. I believe there were some others. Oh, The Big O, Cowboy Bebop, Trigun. Those are some other things that I watched. But the real first step I took into becoming the elitist anime shitlord that I am today, I when my parents got Netflix, I was browsing their anime selection, and at the time, the hot show was Full Metal Alchemist. And I thought, okay, I'll finally give in to temptation. I'll buy Full Metal Alchemist. But then I saw this other show called Full Metal Panic. And I thought, Full Metal Panic? What's this show right here? And so I decided to forego Full Metal Alchemist and buy Full Metal Panic. And I watched the entire series back when Netflix was still a mail-in only service, and it was absolutely delightful. I love Full Metal Panic. It kept me on my toes the entire time. I loved the relationship between Kaname and Sosuke. I loved the mecha action. It was incredibly intense for what it was. And to this day, Full Metal Panic is one of my all-time favorite anime series. And soon I was subscribing to Anime Insider, and they were showing me all of these anime that weren't airing on television, and I'm like, well, I gotta check these out, man. These sound cool. And that's where I discovered things like Planetes and Tenjo Tenge, which is kind of regrettable on that last one. But I discovered this show called Godanner, which is one of my all-time favorite mecha anime, and I will defend that show to my grave.
So let's talk a little bit about this because one of the things that I'm curious about, and I think you come from my position as well, and you've been on the con scene, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but what does it mean to be an anime fan? Because you're old school, I'm very much old school, and we've seen a changing of the guard in many ways. And you just mentioned a bunch of shows: Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex, Full Metal Panic, Inuyasha, Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z to some degree on that. It is sort of old school, and we have a whole generation that hasn't seen any of that. Or the Sailor Moon they've seen is Sailor Moon Crystals, or they've seen all the reboots, or Neon Genesis Evangelion. They think the Netflix version is the original version. And so I'm just curious how you view that because you're an old school anime fan, and we have a very different generation growing up right now in anime. And How do you feel about that? Because it's odd for me when I go to a con and there's that division existing.
I feel that's sort of my issue with anime fandom today, and I'm very much a part of this if you follow me on social media, because I'm a lot more bitter on social media than I am in real life. Because if you meet me in real life, I'm very reserved, I'm very quiet. I tend to sort of keep my thought I tend to sort of keep my thoughts to myself. But I feel the biggest division in anime today isn't necessarily like between the old school and the new school. The division is between the casuals and the hardcore people. And to me, what it means to be an anime fan, and I'm very much on the hardcore side, it's watching anime and appreciating it in all forms, old and new. I feel the problem with the casuals is that they only watch what is current. They only watch what is new. They pay no heed to whatever came before. And meanwhile, I'm here braying endlessly about how, guys, you can put down the new episodes of Black Clover and My Hero Academia, and you can watch these shows. You can watch these little one-shots like Bubblegum Crisis and Giant Robo. All three of the Gundam movies are available for streaming on YouTube free at this moment. There's Retro Crush, this free app that lets you watch all this old anime. There's a whole world out there. Don't just focus on the latest and greatest. Watch what came before it and gain an appreciation for the now.
Yeah, so I'm gonna add to that, and I'm curious your thoughts. So I'm a big Crunchyroll fan. It's no secret. I love Crunchyroll. I love
Me too.
Crunchyroll for the fact that they got the new stuff, they got the old stuff, and they got some stuff on there that you're like, what the hell is this? And it turns out to be really entertaining, for lack of a better word. Or if you're watching Queen's Blade, don't watch that with your girlfriend. But that's neither here nor there. Um,
Oh.
but kidding aside, I think Crunchyroll has sort of ruined this to some degree because it used to be that there were shows that you needed to watch to be called an anime fan. Cowboy Bebop is a great example of that. You know, watching Sailor Moon or Dragon Ball Z or Outlaw Star back on Toonami's days were that, or a Code Geass to some degree, if you want to even get closer. And now we have seasons of anime due to Crunchyroll breaking it up that way, and I feel that that's kind of ruined it. And so, and it was going that way anyway to some degree, but I feel like streaming anime has ruined this entire position and has created that division. And you're the person I want to speak to about this because you're a diehard anime fan and you appreciate some of the new stuff also. Dr. Stone, Attack on Titan is great. My Hero
Dorohedoro. I
Academia.
love Dorohedoro.
Exactly. So we're not bashing on the new shit. We're just saying it's kind of very, very weird that it seems that there's a whole generation lost. And it's a real problem because things like Astro Boy or even Galaxy 999 are super important. So
Uh,
I don't know how you feel about all that, and you voiced it a little bit, but why do you think this is happening with this division?
I think you pretty much nailed it on the head, and I don't blame Crunchyroll or Funimation or any of the illegal pirate sites for this. This is actually goes all the way back to the days of fan subbing, where fans used torrents to download the new stuff that was coming out. And back then, you had to know what a torrent was or how to use torrents in order to get all the new stuff. That's how I sort of watched a few episodes of things like Haruhi Suzumiya and Bleach, but mostly I used fan subs to track down the old stuff because I kind of knew that the new stuff was going to get licensed, while the old stuff would sort of be follow by the would sort of fall by the wayside.
Yeah, and I agree that a bunch of fan stuff used to happen back in 1995 to about 2000. It was what's known as the Wild West in voiceover work. For those who don't know, what would happen is that things would get voiced over in piecemeal. So 3 episodes would come to the States. Nobody knew what the hell it was. People would then dub it. You would then voice it. Sometimes the pay would be okay. Sometimes the pay would be horrific. Sometimes you wouldn't even be paid. There were certain companies that were doing this for the first time and starting to get a grip on it. And then what would happen is that 3 episodes would come in, and then 3 months later, another 3 episodes would come in, and then 3 months later, another 3 episodes will come in, and that's why you have people who basically are in 900 roles and are in all these small roles. If you go on Internet Movie Database and you look at it, there's a reason why they have that many roles, and there are a bunch of small roles. And so fans used to do it, and then eventually it became professional. And that's kind of the short version of that story in many ways. And then a lot of money came in, and so on and so forth. And fast forward 20 years, Sony now owns Funimation, which should give you an indication of where things are even going further. And AT&T owns Crunchyroll, in case you didn't know that, which is crazy. They also own Rooster Teeth. So that's a whole different discussion for another day. But it does raise questions on who's dubbing what, and even that, and access to some degree.
Well, I cannot just to get back on track when I talk about
Yeah.
simulcasting, I feel the big problem that permeates at least the casuals is the old FOMO. And for those who don't know what FOMO is of course fear of missing out. Like they feel that they're going to be behind the scenes, like, oh, I gotta watch Demon Slayer, I'm not gonna be one of the cool kids. I gotta watch My Hero Academia. I gotta watch this. I gotta watch that. You don't. You don't need to watch everything that comes out every season. Find one or two shows to follow, and then go through the previous seasons, and if you find something there you're like, here's this little show called, I don't know, 91 Days or so, and watch that and see what you think about it. Because there's a lot of... The one thing I can say about anime is that every year it's been consistent. Every season, there's always at least 1, 2, or 3 shows that stand out, and dozens of hidden gems every year. But I do feel that the saturation of anime, because you look at the number of anime that was made at the beginning of the 21st century, it was like 86 or something in a year. Nowadays, we have hundreds that come out every year, and I think this is sort of a problem with simulcasting, is the signal to noise ratio. Oftentimes, the stuff that gets popular is the, for lack of a better word, generic shonen shit.
So I do want to say something about that, because once every decade there is a valid show to watch that changes the game. It happens once every decade. Attack on Titan, the first
Oh
season,
yeah.
was that.
Oh,
But by
I got
Dev,
caught. I got caught up in the hype wave. I got caught up in the hype wave. I'm freely admit it.
it's
Once episode 5 hit of Attack on Titan, because I watched it around the time episode 5 or 7 came out, I was like, dude, I'm hooked. I gotta watch this. And you know what? Attack on Titan, I'll say this, in spite of its faults, it's another entry-level anime that I will say actually holds up.
the reason why I bring that up is that is the exception to the rule. So every once in a while of FOMO, there is an exception. Attack on Titan, when it first came out, was that exception. I don't think My Hero Academia, I don't think Food Wars, and those are two amazing shows. Even Doctor Stone, and I love Doctor
I
Stone.
like both Food Wars and My Hero Academia, but I think Dr. Stone is the best of those 3 that you just mentioned,
But
simply because
yeah,
I feel it's different. Because it's
Eh,
not about fighting or any sort of
yeah.
competition. It's just about rebuilding civilization. Now, there are battles in there, but it's not the primary focus.
So what my point I'm trying to make, and I'll throw Fire Force in there too, is that those shows are not redefining shows.
Exactly.
Attack on Titan, the first season was in many ways, and that was the exception. And it brings up a point, because I also feel right now, and you mentioned the cool kids, and we're going to talk about anime cons, is that I also feel that to some degree the anime con side is driving this as well, because it is that cool kid mentality, and there's all these panels. I have an Attack on Titan panel. I'm working on a My Hero Academia panel. I'm working on a Pokemon panel, and there's all this cosplay and voice actors. And so my question is that, do you also feel though that part of the problem is the cons and the con scene that's also driving that fear of missing out factor? Because I
I
kind of
think
see
that's
it.
always been a factor ever since I started attending conventions back in 2006. Because the trends of cosplay tend to ebb and flow over the years. Like when I started, the big things that everybody was cosplaying were Naruto and Bleach and Full Metal Alchemist. In 2009, like the hot things were, I guess you had Full Metal Alchemist again, but like Bleach, Naruto, they were sort of on the decline in favor of things like Axis Powers, Hetalia, Haruhi Suzumiya.
Gurren
Like
Lagann.
trends in anime and fandom tend to come and go. You're always going to have constants that stick around, but you're there's going to be like some things that are even more popular than others. Like usually a Naruto photo shoot would consist of as many people as there are on the roster of a football team, practice squad included. Whereas nowadays, your Naruto photo shoot looks around to be around the size of the amount of people on a baseball roster. Well, maybe a little more than that, like two hockey rosters, I guess, but it's not what it once was. But you're always going to get shows that are popular that will keep getting cosplay splayed. It's just very much like fashion itself. Trends just come and go.
And also, to make matters more complicated, you also feel that when cons also book certain voice actors and book certain celebrities and book certain directors, that also kind of puts pressure on her. Do you feel that the popularity of what's on social media dictates that over the convention and
No,
makes the
I don't think I don't think well, of course you're going to get famous voice actors that are always in the popular stuff, but I don't think that's going to drive people to cosplay that character. Like I don't think anybody was pressured to cosplay King Oberon from Sword Art Online whenever Todd Habercorn was a guest at the convention.
but do you think though that to some degree that does drive some
No,
people to do
I
certain
don't.
things and it
I think
brings
it's
business
just
in and affects certain
it
things
goes
on
back
the
to what I
monetary
say
level?
about fashion. Trends just sort of come and go. I feel that, you know, if a voice actor for a specific character that you're known to cosplay as is at a convention, that is encouragement, but it's not the driving factor. The driving factor is always what is popular in the moment. And right now, like the big three things to cosplay are My Hero Academia, Demon Slayer, and Fate.
Yeah, and since we're talking about the cons, I mean, you and me are in a very different sector than the cosplay side, the guest side, the dealer side. We're on the panel frontier, for lack of for the correct word, I should say. And so I want to talk about that because I've been doing this shit for 9 years now. And honestly, I've noticed a variety of changes. I don't know. I think you've been doing it for a little bit longer than I have.
I have been doing it for 6 years, so a little less than you.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I'm at a stage where I have noticed a variety of changes. I've noticed a massive amount of things that have changed in the con world between how cons are conducted, how guests are conducted. We obviously spoke about the fandom, and so I'm just curious what you've noticed as far as panels and attendance and guests and things like that, and even your panels and getting accepted. And I know it's a lot to break down, so we're going to probably break this down even further. So,
What I feel with me is that I don't submit too many panels. Like, I only choose four that I want to submit. And I think that four is a nice round number to submit to conventions. But in terms of panels, like, I notice that there are a lot more panels on diversity and LGBTQ issues, and for both better or for worse. There's also panels on stuff that is not anime, which I hate to play the role of a gatekeeper, but I don't think non-anime panels belong at anime cons. Like, if it's about video games, sure, since the Venn diagram and intersect of that is practically on top of one another, but like, if you're doing a panel about Overwatch or League of Legends at an anime convention, I'm
it should be
sorry, but
limited. It should be
no.
limited, very limited.
Yeah, very limited. Like my panels I specify in history. I specialize in history, teaching people about the people and the series that helped make the medium.
Yeah, so for my specialty, I have a Tezuka panel. I also like talking about the future of anime and directors you should know, and then I also link a lot of stuff of West meets East. So just a heads up, my Hero Academia panel that I'm working on definitely combines a comic book, a piece of literature, and the actual anime, and we talk about that in a very intellectual way. My Attack on Titan panel does something very similar, and then I have my Pokemon and government panel that I'm building, and obviously, it's revolving around anime, and so that stuff, in my opinion, is awesome to see it. And but what I've noticed lately, and I do a lot of intellectual panels and things like that, what I've noticed is that I find that the panel intelligence level has gone down significantly since when I started. And I don't know, maybe it's me. And this is why I want to talk to you, and this is why I'm having you on, because I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel that the intelligence of the panels that are being presented, and even that diversity, and look, I'm all for diversity, I got no problem with it, but after a while, you know, how many LBGTQ panels can you have? How many disabilities and anime panels can you have? I mean,
Exactly.
don't you want to talk about something more? And don't you
I
want to
feel I think like you can have a limited amount of diversity, LGBT and um what's the disability
and
things,
this
but
is
if you
coming. I'm going to preface this. I have a physical disability, and I'm saying this, and I
I've
want to
worked with
make
autistic people, I know.
so it's not. It's coming out of a place when we talk about this, and I'll speak for me, and you could speak for yourself if I don't hit on the head here. But it's coming out of a place where it's becoming overbearing, and it's hurting the con, and it's becoming toxic, in my opinion. When you have 20%, it's too big of a number, and it's taking away from actually really good panels to be out there, in my opinion, at the very least.
All things in moderation is my belief. And they need to find a balance between the talk about social issues in anime and the fandom and those who genuinely want to talk about the medium, such as yourself and myself. And there's always going to be room for these sorts of panels about the LGBT community and disabilities and diversity, but you can't have too many of them.
Yeah, and even to add to that, if you do have too many of them, it kind of cheapens the entire message that is being spread. You know, I don't see East versus West panels at anime cons all that frequently. And so when I do one of them, it's very valuable in many ways, I feel. You know, when you're doing something that's extremely talking about the big three directors before, or the big three manga artists before the people who invented DBZ, Naruto, and Bleach, that's not done at many anime panels. And if that was done all the time, it would cheapen your information.
Well, to go away from the panels about social issues to what I present, that's sort of what I aim for with my panels. Because one of my flagship panels that I do is the best anime movies you haven't seen. That usually gets a packed room anywhere between 70% to near 100. I remember one time at Toricon, all the way up in Rochester, there was a huge line out the door of the of a classroom, to the point where they it was a standing room only audience. I ran out of pamphlets to hand out to the people because of um just how many people there were, but people love getting recommendations for things, and that's what I aim to do with my panels, to sort of steer these people who may not necessarily know about anime or its history beyond what's popular, saying, hey, here's this movie by Katsuhiro Otomo, the guy who did Akira. It's called Robot Carnival. Go and watch it. It's really, really good. Or I don't know, a panel that I've only hosted once, my history on the rise and fall of the OAV, because I feel one problem we have with the modern anime scene has been the death of the OAV. And for those who don't know, OAVs used to be these little one shots where creators and directors could get their juices flowing and do whatever they wanted, or could be brief advertisements for a certain manga, like two of my favorites, Shinesman and Elf Princess Rain. Nowadays, we just
Yeah.
think of OAVs as those little bonus episodes that come on anime DVDs, but back in the day, OAVs were serious stuff.
And to even talk a little bit more about OAVs, OAVs were also in many ways somewhat more pure because they didn't have to care anymore about toy placement. And with certain shows,
Well,
you
they
know,
had to advertise something.
but with an OVA, you didn't have to go all the way in. You also had a little bit more time in many ways. Sometimes you had 45 minutes to
Yeah,
do
I
something.
talk about that in my panel.
And so just to give people a taste of that, and so that's what,
I have clips of some of the stuff I'm talking about. Like I'll always showcase one of the early action scenes from Dallos, the first ever OAV.
yeah, and I love my OAVs. I think OAVs are original OVAs. I should say. I'm sorry, I'm misspeaking. OVAs. Love them. I
You
think
say it's a potato thing. I say OVA. I say OAV. You can
yeah.
say OVA. It's the same thing, no matter how you say it. Oh, let's call the whole thing off.
And so now I want to go back to the anime and panel side and all that stuff. So obviously you've been doing it for 6 years. I've been doing it for 9. I am getting fed up. It's no secret. I've noticed a lot of changes. I've noticed a lot of changes in the way panels are being booked. And we were speaking a little bit about what's out there and that I throw out a lot of different panels and I have about 17 or 18 panels that I've built across the board, from everything from comic book stuff at Comic Cons that I attend to things from a Tezuka panel all the way to Pokemon to an Attack on Titan to how to just prepare and be economically savvy at an Anime Con. And I'll submit 18 of them and I will get one out of my 18. And I know that it's not because my work isn't good. And so I'm wondering how you feel about that because I remember five
As I
years
said,
ago.
I have several panels that I've gotten in the can, but I usually only submit 4. One that I know will usually get a good attendance. That's my anime movies panel, and 3 more. And usually I can get 2, 3, and maybe even on occasion all 4, depending on what convention I'm at.
Yeah.
This year at Katsucon, I submitted all 4 panels, and none of them got accepted. So it's a crapshoot. I think it's not a good idea to submit more than 5, because I know Anime Next has a limit for how many panels you can submit, and they will only allow you to submit 4 panels under your name. And I think that's a fair policy.
And so I'm just curious, have you noticed though, with all the booking and all that stuff, that it has changed? Because I mean, you mentioned Katsucon. I submitted a bunch of work to Anime USA in DC, and I submitted panels that they accepted the year before that they didn't accept that sold out the year before. And so I find that this is very much an odd position, and I feel like there's very much a changing of the guard going on right now.
I didn't really notice it. Like, I feel that it depends on the sort of convention you're at. Like, Anime Next, I'll use as one of my favorite examples. Otakon 2. They tend to be a lot more picky with their panels. Like, it is really hard to get accepted as a panelist for Otakon. And I'm lucky that my OAV panel got accepted. And even then, I was booked at like 8 a.m., 9 a.m. on the Friday, and yet I still got like 70% capacity for my OAV panel. Likewise, with Anime Next, I've gotten 2 panels, I believe, one year, and they were both fairly well attended. One of which was a panel that I was very happy about. That was the American Anime Bubble of 2008, I think it was. That was some of my best work, but honestly, I haven't really noticed a trend as far as acceptance goes for anime conventions. Like maybe you've had some bad luck, but outside of Katsucon this year, I haven't had that much bad luck with panels.
I've had a rough 2020, and then even a little bit of a rough 2019 going into it, and I had a really bad experience at a con. I was accepted, but I was not put on their website or their pamphlet they hand out to their guests,
That happened to me at Colossal Con East last year, but
and it
I chalked
upset
that
me.
one up to incompetence because they booked me at like 3 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon when nobody was going to be there, and they booked me at like 2 a.m. on a Friday.
What happened to me really upset me, and it rubbed me the wrong way, and that's where I'm at. So and after that, I actually canceled Otakon, appearing at Otakon, because that event happened 2 weeks before Otakon, and I canceled that because I was just really massively upset. And that happened this year, and then it happened last year, and then I haven't done a con since. And it just rubbed me the wrong way. And so that's the first time it happened to me. It was complete incompetence. The way when I brought it up to them at the con, they didn't handle it appropriately. They didn't say, hey, I'm sorry, they made an excuse. And there's some hell and fury going to come out of that on my end and how I deal with it. And I'm going to deal with it in the way I deal with my problems. You can take that for whatever it is. I got no problem saying that. But that's why I'm saying it. And maybe it's a one off. Maybe it's a one off. And then Anime USA did not treat me well as well. And
Well, there's your problem. You went to Anime USA.
yeah, there's my problem. And now they've lost me as a panelist. And so that's where I'm at. And so that's what I'm saying is that I'm just having issues collectively. I've never been to Katsucon. I'm looking forward to going if we ever get back to cons and get back to regular business here. But I do want to talk about that in a minute. But I'm just curious also, because you go to a lot of cons, both as a guest and as a
I
panelist.
average about like 6 a year.
I'm right now averaging about two. And so I'm just curious what you've noticed beyond the panel side of things and where cons have gone, because I've noticed that there's a lot more money coming into cons. And
Well, yeah, because I remember my first ever Anime Next was at the Secaucus, no, Meadowlands Convention Center in Secaucus, New Jersey. And it was a small convention. Well, it wasn't exactly small, but small in compared to something like the Atlantic City Convention Center or the Baltimore Convention Center or the Walter E. Washington Convention Center. But it was small. And for Anime Next 2007 or 2008, I think it was packed in so tight they had to curtain off a part of the parking garage for the artist alley and a panel room. That's how big it got. And then they moved down to Somerset at the Garden State Expo Center, which is no longer there, unfortunately. But they had to spread that out across several hotels. Like, you had the main convention center with the dealer's room, and then you had across the street where the gaming room was, and then another hotel, the Doubletree, that's where all the panels were, and then you had to cross an overpass to go to another hotel where everything else was. I really do like, though, Anime Next's current venue in the Atlantic City Convention Center. Even though it's a 2-hour drive from my house, it is perfectly spacious. There's no real traffic jams. You know where everything is.
yeah, and for full disclosure, Anime Next, their con chair was on my show and was on this show on
Oh,
YouTube.
Anime Next is fantastic.
And they know what they're doing. I think they made the right call in many ways. And I think that it was, and we spoke about that, talking about this virus and what was going on and
I
how.
have been to Anime Next, that convention center, for like 3 or 4 years now, and I'm going to tell you this right now, Andrew. They are not going to run out of space anytime soon. Like the area where where the pre-reg line is, there's a whole football fields area of space where they can expand outwards to. There's 4 whole floors of open space. They have a lot of space and they utilize it perfectly. And it's unlike Katsukan where they really, really need to cap that attendance.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that that gives into a new point that I would like to hear your opinion on. And obviously, we're in COVID-19 here. Every con is canceled. I think the last con that happened was C2E2 in Chicago, and that was before Emerald City or right around Emerald City. And obviously, anime cons were canceled. I did. The people from Anime Next, they canceled it, and you can listen to that on my YouTube channel, just Pop Anime Comics, and they were explaining why, for a variety of reasons. Con crud is real. I don't know if you've ever gotten con crud. I don't think I have, and I'm thankful for that. I'm lucky, or I'm immune to it. It's one or the
I've
other.
mentioned Katsukan before. I've come home from Katsukan with a sore throat, but I don't blame, anybody getting sick or anything. I blame all the dry air in the hotel.
But I think my point that I'm trying to make here is that obviously Katsucon is packed. I don't know if you've ever been to Anime Boston. That's a packed
No,
con.
I have not.
And Boston caps out at 25,000, and it's packed at like 15,000 to be honest, especially in the dealer's room. And now that they have metal detectors, and so what do you think this looks like going forward? I'm gonna say our friends at Anime NYC are still advertising in November, and Anime NYC takes place in this little city called New York City. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but it's a pretty safe place with
It
this
may
virus.
it it may take Mayor de Blasio to shut it down by this point, because even though our cases have been trending downwards, even though our hospitalizations have been going down, even though our deaths are going down, everything about the virus is trending downwards. We still don't know what's going to happen in the fall. And this is a place where it's nearly impossible to social distance, and you cannot keep track of everybody who is or who isn't wearing a mask. And I don't think a lot of convention congoers would want to wear a mask merely because, and I have to wear a mask because of work. It makes it really hard to breathe. Like if you wear a mask for too long, there's reports of people getting lightheaded or having shortness of breath for wearing those things for prolonged periods of time. But
Even to go further, because I think
I,
that
I don't want to. I don't want to talk about the quarantines. Otherwise, I'm just going to go into a frenzy. But I feel that the worst so far has been over. I'm just sick of the politicization of it.
so I don't want to get too political, but I'm curious also, and this is my opinion about it, and we don't have to dive too deep into it, but I also feel that anime cons are very much sort of chaotic. People are moving
Yes.
all over the place.
Oh, dude. They are nowhere near as chaotic as when I went to conventions in the mid 2000s, where you had people playing Duck Duck Goose in the hallway, when you had fangirls with yaoi paddles. Like, I got spanked with a yaoi paddle and it broke me. People giving out free hugs, like, playing with Pocky and all that stuff. It is a lot more chilled than it was in the mid 2000s.
And so it's still a little chaotic. A lot of people bumping around. I'm on crutches, and people don't even see me on crutches. I highly doubt that in this virus's setting that people are going to be even more active. I think people are going to be even less active, or if they are more active, thank God. Maybe they will be for once, and maybe somebody won't bump into me and I won't die because it's happened and it's not fun. It's not fun when you're on.
Well, between the risk of the virus and the downturn in the economy, I feel Anime NYC's attendance will be down this year, but I think that's sort of for the better because it's less crowded, a little less chaotic, a little more laid back. We'll see where we are by November.
And so you brought up 2 points, and so the first thing, I'm saying, and I'm going to say it now, is I also think a mask would kind of ruin the vibe a little bit, and also
Yeah,
cosplay.
without question.
Because I mean, when you wear a mask, in many ways, if you and me were sitting in the same room and I was wearing a mask and you were wearing a mask, we would be safe or safer or safe as we can be. But it would definitely create some type of barrier and not create a great vibe because you're not seeing half of somebody's mouth move, and it's a very odd feeling. And then secondly, obviously, right now the economy has been suppressed. I don't know if we're in a recession where we're
We are in a recession, although, and I'm not gonna dwell on this for too long. It was ultimately inevitable, coronavirus or no coronavirus, but I don't want to talk about this for too long.
so
It just makes me
my,
depressed.
my point is that, and this is my opinion, is that going to a con is a luxury. It is not a necessity.
You
And
know, I want to stop you right there, and I apologize for cutting you off, but if there's one good thing I can say about this pandemic, I noticed how much money I was spending at these conventions, and I think, I could deal with a year off to save money, to pay for some necessities like my car. I'm looking to buy a house or find a place for myself. Maybe save up and just make one big anime purchase per month or so, and then just go about my life. And
so
that's sort of one thing I can say about the pandemic that at least is helped me for the better. It's helping me save a lot more money.
so even to go further, I'm a WWE fan. You're a WWE fan. You're a wrestling fan. A while back, Roman
I'm not a
Reigns.
WWE fan.
Fair
I don't want
enough.
I don't want if you're curious as to why I'm not a WWE fan, I don't want to support a brand that has ultimately become complacent.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But Roman Reigns still said something that was fascinating, and I think it resonates here. And I'm curious, and correct me if I'm wrong, because for me, this is something that I'm starting to realize is that you need an off season as a wrestler sometimes. It's a physical entity. It's a physical sport, for lack of a better word here. And so what I'm starting to realize is that because I only did one con last year, I have all these ideas, and I feel that when I went to that
That's
con,
sort of how I feel. I feel like because I don't need to prep more panels, it's giving me ideas. Like I'll just give you two panels that popped into my head, or one that I'm already working on, and that it is the history of Japanese wrestling. And the other panel that I'm working on is a beginner's guide to classic anime. And the third panel I want to do, because the show, at least the anime adaptation, celebrates its 15th anniversary next year, Babes, Bullets, and Blood, a Black Lagoon panel.
and so because that's how I feel. And I think you're starting to feel it as well. And I mean, I've started several other projects, this one included, because I now have more time and I'm actually starting to understand that I'm actually enjoying myself and it's not as stressful. And I'm having a lot more fun, and I'm actually having a lot more fun on the internet. And then on top of that, I also feel that money wise, I'm not spending as much money
Yeah,
as I normally would. And I mean, I don't go to as many cons. I go to one or two a year. And honestly, I'm saving money on hotel stuff, and I'm finding that that's actually really healthy, and that I think that we need an off year. And I think a lot of people, in many ways, have overappreciated anime cons to some degree. And I think people needed a year off. I really do. And I think that that's one of the best things that's going to come out of this is that I think people are going to be grateful that panels are back, that cosplay is back, that guests and celebrities are back, that dealers are back. And I think everybody, once this stuff kind of comes back into full swing, and we don't really know when, I think it's going to be a much healthier environment. I think it's going to be a much more appreciated environment. I think these cons are going to appreciate it too. And I think they're going to be thrilled that they have their fans back.
I don't miss spending all of that money, but I do miss just the atmosphere of a convention. It's a nice weekend away from me, away from my troubles. Because here's the thing, I love to travel. I love long drives. Like, not just to conventions, but I'll go to, like, minor league hockey games in Reading, in Allentown, in Wilkes-Barre. I want to go up to Binghamton to see the Binghamton Devils. I want to see some college hockey games because I love hockey. I love driving. I love listening to music while driving. I just love talking to myself when I drive. as well. In fact, I'm going to get a new car stereo this Friday with all the money I've saved from not going to conventions.
And so, obviously, you're probably going to enjoy your stereo. I don't know what music you listen to. Hopefully, you're listening to my podcast because I need those views really desperately. My numbers are down like 90%. It's a nightmare, so I expect nothing less from you personally. But
I'll give your show a plug.
but all kidding aside, and not to get too depressing, but I think 2020 is written off. It sounds like you
It's
and
a
me.
lost year, and the economic consequences of this are going to be felt for several years now.
And I definitely feel,
Between
yeah.
the complete shutdown of the economy to the stimulus spending and all the money printing, like the economic forecast for the beginning of the decade is very bleak.
And so, when do you think that this stuff is going to sort of rev back up on both a personal level? Because the way I feel is that this is now not a vaccination problem. It's a human comfort problem
I
when
would
we feel
say we
comfortable.
may not get back to normal economically, at least until like 2022 or 2023.
So, what does the con scene look like? Because that's kind of your area of expertise.
You're going to see a drop in convention attendance, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I feel conventions sort of need to shrink for a second, like just to pull back a little bit, because in times of recession, people need to save money.
Did you
But I
also
don't
think
know.
that some cons need to die to some degree as well?
I would never ever say that. Ever. No convention deserve unless the people who run it are absolutely horrible people beyond redemption,
And
unless the conventions themselves are poorly run, poorly planned out dumpster fires.
so the reason
No
why I asked the
convention
question,
deserves to
the
die.
reason why I
I
asked the
stand
question
by that.
the reason why I asked the question is that right now there's like 3,400 cons that go on every year. And that's a lot of conventions in 52 weeks. And so to me, it very,
Well, it
and I don't
depends on
say
your
it,
territory. If you live in like the deep south, like some states they only have like one or two conventions.
yeah.
It's not that there's too many anime conventions, but it's more or less a case of you have to choose what's in your area. Think of the people out in like the mountain regions of Colorado and Utah and Arizona and New Mexico. Like, how many anime conventions do they get?
Maybe 3 or 4 in the entire state a year at best.
Exactly. I'm lucky. I live in the Northeast. I live in the tri state area. We've got plenty of anime conventions.
There's about eight
I
or
don't
nine
think
in DC.
I don't think like there's too many anime conventions. I just think it's a case of where some states and some territories get it better than others.
Fair enough, fair enough. So anyway, we've been speaking for an hour. I could pick your brain all night. I enjoy doing this, but I do want to give you a chance to promote everything you got because I don't want to depress you any further with what's going on. So, where can people find you on social media? Where can people listen to your show? I've been
Okay,
on twice.
I do not recommend you follow me on social media. My views politically, I am very, very right of center. And those sorts of viewpoints are not tolerated in the anime community. Do not worry, I am not a Trump supporter. I'm more a person who believes that there is no political solution to our current problems.
Call Seth Rollins; he'll burn it down with you.
No, man, I don't want to do property. I don't believe in property damage.
But it's an eye for an eye.
Uh,
Too soon. Too soon.
no, it's just.
Yeah.
You want to know what I think of Seth Rollins? Seth
Burn it
Rollins is
down.
that Seth Rollins is that one draft pick your team gets that never really develops into the player that you want him to be, but the team keeps him around because they keep saying that he's going to be so good one of these days.
So he's Cespedes, is what you're saying.
No, not necessarily
Yeah.
Ioannis Cespedes. Cespedes is just more unlucky. Seth Rollins is just like, what does WWE see in him that makes him a main eventer? Like, they never should have broken up the Shield.
Fair enough.
They should have. The Shield should have reunited with each member serving a different function in singles action.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And they should have had a
But
fourth member too.
but
They really
Seth
should have.
Rollins on his own, man. As I said, he's the perfect symbol for the WWE today, man. They don't he is a undersized man who is trying to read whatever drivel is given to him by the writers, who will never be bigger than the brand, because according to Triple H, or according to the powers that be backstage, they don't want stars.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Like,
But
here, let me just go on a rant about the problem with modern WWE. And I'm gonna just equate this to my love of Japanese wrestling. Can you imagine if Giant Baba told Jumbo Tsuruta that he was never ever going to be bigger than him? Or if Antonio Inoki told the Three Musketeers that is never ever going to be another Antonio Inoki, or there going to be no more Inokis? Or if Mitsuharu Misawa told the young stars of pro wrestling Noah that you're not going to be bigger than the brand? Or if Geto and Jado told the likes of Hiroshi Tanahashi and Shinsuke Nakamura that we don't want stars? Well, that's been WWE's mentality for the past 6 years and change.
it's probably been their mentality for about 10, to be honest. It just took 5 of them to get John Cena out of that company in the main line.
Well, pretty
True.
much. It's just like,
True.
remember, Ryback was pretty much told by Triple H, and again, it is Ryback talking, but I believe him in this case. Triple H came up to him and said, there aren't going to be any more John Cenas. We don't need another John Cena. Nobody's going to be bigger than the brand.
It's complicated. It's not.
The ratings speak for themselves, my friend. The ratings speak for themselves.
They speak for themselves in a time where they had no competition. Now they got sports to deal with, and the ratings.
Even without sports, though, their ratings have gone down.
That's what I was saying. That's exactly what was happening, and
I don't blame. I'm not my anger at WWE is not directed at the marks that the WWE fanboys claim are, quote, ruining the product, or because capitalism or anything like that. My complaint of WWE is that they've ultimately become complacent. Now that TNA has sort of screwed themselves due to poor management of the company, Ring of Honor is on the decline, and AEW isn't the threat they said they were, WWE just doesn't care anymore. They've already got their money, they've got the marks, etc., and they care not about making new stars or creating larger-than-life personalities. Vince McMahon of today reminds me of Vern Gagne during the dying days of the AWA. A once respected elder statesman still trying to accomplish what he did back during his heyday, but the rest of the world has passed him by.
Well, we're going to leave it at that, but I do want to give you an opportunity. Where can people find your podcast? Because you got your podcast. It's going on. You got a bunch of episodes planned. I know what's coming out. Not going to ruin anything for anybody, but where can people find your show? Because I think I want to direct people there.
You can find me on soundcloud.com/Otaku Nate Show. And you can find me at facebook.com/Otaku Nate Show. I'm hoping to find a host like through Podbeam or Podcatcher or what have you. I'm hoping to expand out to places like SoundCloud and iTunes as well. I've got 11 episodes out right now, with episodes 12 and 13 coming on down the line. It is the anime podcast where we talk about anime that we want to talk about.
And I've been on for one of the main episodes and a bonus episode, and it was a lot of fun. It was great. We had a really in-depth discussion about Dr. Stone in the episode I was on, and it was a lot of fun, guys, and I really enjoyed it, and I recommend listening to it. I really do, because it's definitely insightful, it's respectable, and just providing a different insight. When you get 2 or 3 people into a room and you're all talking about it, you're all coming from different angles, you learn things and you see things differently. When I was on the episode, excuse me, I came in with one perspective, and I'm not saying my perspective completely shifted, but things that I didn't think about or see were shorn in that episode. So that's something that's cool. And so when you're listening to it, and I believe I was on the first episode, I think.
Yes, you were.
You could hear that there are things you can be like, oh man, I didn't think of it that way, and so there you go. So that's pretty much. I think that's a wrap, man. Do you have anything else you got to promote?
No, it's just when conventions become a thing again, come to my panels.
And typically, when you go to a con, just because I go under the name Pop Anime Comics for most of my panels, I might be doing some virtual con work coming up in September. I'm waiting back to hear for Crunchyroll Expo. Fingers crossed, probably not going to happen, but who knows? And then, what name do you go under, or is it just Nate?
I usually just go by Nate by my regular name.
And so what is that? Because just so people can be on the lookout when they're listening to this.
What?
Nate Milbank.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure, give the people something to look out for, And for those who need to look up Nate, if you type in Otaku Nate, chances are a bunch of stuff's going to come up, and you'll probably find his social media on Facebook that way. And that's probably the quickest way how to find it.
I don't use Twitter. Just
On
even
Facebook.
going beyond Twitter being toxic, it's just not my thing.
On Facebook, if you type in Otaku Nate, it'll probably come up. On SoundCloud, I know it'll come up because I've done it. And so that's the easiest way how to find it, everybody, to check it out. And then once it's on iTunes and a variety of other hosting sites, which we're going to talk about in a minute here off air, so I'm going to help you out with that, it'll also be under that as well. And I've been saying it to everybody and every guest, right now you definitely got to support people, whether they got a product, they got a PayPal, they got a coffee, whatever they got, you got to throw money at them, especially because times are tough. Every dollar matters. Every cent matters. And if you can't afford it and you don't have electricity or internet, please contact me because I would love to know how you're watching me personally, and I will help you personally and find a way how to help you. But if you do have internet and electricity and you're not supporting me or Nate or anybody in this sector, there's no more excuses. Giving somebody a follow on Twitter, checking out their Facebook page, checking out their Instagram page, supporting Nate's show by just listening to an episode. And if you like it, subscribing. There's no excuse anymore for not doing that. And especially in today's environment when legitimately it's free to do so. And so no excuses anymore. And I'm not tolerating excuses on that front. I don't know if you're tolerating them, but I'm not.
All right.
And just everybody, thanks for watching. I would wish everybody to have a great night, but instead have an American night.